Yud Zayin Iyar. In a nutshell, Hilchos may be spoken L'Toelis only if all necessary conditions are met. Hilchos L'Toelis. In this, the concluding chapter of Sefer Chofetz Chaim, we will learn when halacha permits us to speak Hilchos L'Toelis for a constructive purpose. Consider the following example. The Steins are considering building an extension into the back of their house. They have met with Yosef Kriegler of Kriegler Construction and are on the verge of signing a contract with him. Mr. Stein's good friend Hanach Willenstein is dismayed. He had a terrible experience with Mr. Kriegler when he made extensive renovations on his new home. When the job was 80% done, Mr. Kriegler requested that the balance be paid in full. Mr. Willenstein complied, and after receiving his money, Mr. Kriegler vanished for 6 months. When he finally reappeared, he offered no explanation other than to say, "I couldn't get the job done until now, but now I'll finish it fast." It took another 2 months until he finished the week's work that remained. The Chofetz Chaim lists 5 conditions that need to be fulfilled for Mr. Willenstein to be allowed to share this information with his friend, Mr. Stein. 1. He must be certain that Mr. Kriegler actually was at fault. If, for example, Mr. Kriegler had taken ill, and this was why the work dragged on for an additional 2 months, it would be wrong to mention this at all. 2. He must not exaggerate. 3. His intentions must be to protect Mr. Stein from harm, not to get even with Mr. Kriegler. 4. If there is a way to protect Mr. Stein without speaking badly of Mr. Kriegler, then he must take that course of action. For example, he might recommend another contractor with a sterling reputation and make no mention of Mr. Kriegler. 5. He must be certain that the only result will be that Mr. Stein will not hire Mr. Kriegler for the job. In other words, Mr. Kriegler will not suffer any loss other than this particular job, which he had been hoping to get. However, if Mr. Stein is known to have a temper and will publicly humiliate Mr. Kriegler the next time they meet, then Mr. Willenstein should not provide any information. Now let us consider the following scenario. Mr. Willenstein decides that his opinion of Mr. Kriegler is absolutely correct and he must warn Mr. Stein. However, Mr. Stein's reaction is, "I refuse to believe such Hilchos. I have known Mr. Kriegler for 20 years. I can't believe that he wouldn't honor his commitment. Most probably, you did something to really get him upset, and that's why he was slow in finishing the job." Mr. Kriegler was hired, and sure enough, after collecting the balance of the payment, he disappeared for 6 weeks without completing the job. Mr. Stein finally contacted him, lost his temper, and said, "I see that Willenstein was right when he said that you would vanish once you got your money. I never should have trusted you." If Mr. Willenstein knows that it is unlikely that Mr. Stein will take his warning seriously, with the result of that Mr. Stein will later speak Hilchos, then he should not warn him. In a nutshell, Hilchos may be spoken L'Toelis only if all necessary conditions are met. Have a wonderful day.